It started with a single voice echoing through the narrow streets of Cebu, a voice that didn't belong to this time. It carried the warmth of the 1960s, the rhythm of rock and roll, and the heartbreak of a forgotten era. And yet, it came from a jeepney driver. Every morning before the sun rose, Rico Dela Cruz sang softly as he wiped dust from the mirror of his worn-out jeepney. His voice drifted across sleepy houses, over cracked pavements, through the hum of the city waking up. It wasn't just singing, it was a memory reborn, something both haunting and beautiful. But the world never heard him. Until one day, fate decided to give his voice a stage far bigger than he could ever imagine. How could a man with oil-stained hands and second-hand shoes bring the legend of Elvis Presley back to life? How could a Filipino driver standing before Simon Cowell make the entire world stop and listen? That's where this story begins, in the heart of someone ordinary, where extraordinary dreams quietly bloom. When Rico sang, it wasn't about fame or fortune. It was about his late mother who loved Elvis records. It was about the nights his Lola Estrella hummed along with him under flickering lights. It was about keeping something pure alive, a sound, a feeling, a heartbeat that the world had almost forgotten. But sometimes, life hides miracles behind the faces we pass every day. And when Rico's miracle finally surfaced, it didn't come easy. It came through loss, struggle, and one bold chance that changed everything. So the question remains, what happens when a man who has nothing but a song steps into a world that has everything but soul? Because when he finally sang before Simon Cowell, it wasn't just Elvis who came alive again, it was the spirit of every dreamer who ever dared to believe. Rico Dela Cruz lived a life stitched together with quiet routines and humble dreams. Every dawn, before the first rays touched the roofs of Cebu, he would start his jeepney, an old red one that coughed and rattled like a tired friend. He called it Lola Red, because, in his heart, it carried the same spirit as his grandmother, old but unstoppable. He wasn't a man of many words. His neighbors often saw him sitting outside his small wooden house, sipping coffee from a chipped mug, his radio softly playing Elvis Presley's "Can't Help Falling in Love." He'd close his eyes, let the song wash over him, and hum along, his voice smooth, deep, filled with something the world didn't hear enough of anymore. Rico wasn't poor by spirit, but by circumstance. His father had been a mechanic, his mother a street vendor who loved music more than sleep. When she passed away, Rico took her old Elvis cassette, cracked and worn, and kept it close like a treasure. It was all he had left of her, along with the gift of her voice that somehow lived on in his throat. He drove passengers every day, weaving through traffic, his mind half in the present, half lost in melodies. Children loved his soft humming, old folks smiled when he sang "Love Me Tender" under his breath. But to Rico, it was never about being noticed, it was about feeling alive for those few minutes between stops. At home, his Lola Estrella would wait with a gentle smile and a warm bowl of arroz caldo. She knew every line in his face, every sigh he tried to hide. She saw the dream buried under the weight of bills, repairs, and exhaustion, a dream that once burned bright but now flickered quietly in his chest. He lived simply, saving coins in a jar labeled "for music." It wasn't much, but it was hope in a glass, a reminder that maybe one day, his song could reach beyond the walls of their little home. He didn't know it yet, but that voice, born in silence and struggle, was about to change his entire world. Rico's days blended into one another, the same streets, the same faces, the same quiet melodies humming under the city noise. But behind his calm smile lived a silence far heavier than his passengers could ever guess. He had once dreamed of singing for crowds, of standing under lights that made his mother's favorite songs shine again. But dreams, he learned, didn't pay rent. Every time his jeepney broke down, every time the bills stacked higher, he felt the distance between who he was and who he wanted to be stretch wider, until it hurt just to think about it. At night, he'd sit by the window, guitar resting on his lap, playing softly to the stars. His voice carried through the narrow alleyways, but no one really listened anymore. The world had moved on, to auto-tune, to fame, to faces that smiled for cameras, not for songs. There was one night, though, that broke something inside him. Lola Estrella had fallen ill. The doctor said she needed medicine that cost more than Rico could earn in a month. He tried working double shifts, skipping meals, even selling his old guitar, the same one his mother had played when she taught him, Suspicious Minds. When he let it go, something inside him cracked, a quiet grief he couldn't name. Music had always been his way of holding on, but now even that had slipped away. He'd come home exhausted, staring at the empty space where the guitar used to rest. Some nights he sang to her still, softly, afraid she'd hear the tremble in his voice. But even his songs couldn't hide the fear that maybe, he was running out of reasons to keep dreaming. And yet, in that darkness, there was something waiting, a fragile spark, unseen but alive. It happened on an ordinary Sunday morning, the kind of day when life feels too slow to matter. The city was half awake, the sky pale with rain, and Rico had parked his jeepney under a mango tree to wait for passengers. He leaned back, humming softly to himself, "Can't Help Falling in Love." A few students nearby stopped walking. They turned, smiled, and whispered among themselves. One of them, a young woman with a camera slung across her shoulder, stood listening longer than the rest. Her name was Mia, a volunteer from a local talent foundation who spent her weekends documenting street artists for social media. She didn't say a word, she just lifted her phone and pressed record. The rain began to fall, soft and rhythmic, like a heartbeat against metal. And there was Rico, in his faded blue jacket, singing through the drizzle, eyes closed, lost in another time. The video was only 2 minutes long. But it didn't need more than that. By nightfall, Mia had uploaded it with a simple caption. "Meet Rico, the Filipino Elvis you never knew you needed." By morning, everything had changed. His phone buzzed endlessly, strangers tagging, sharing, commenting. Some laughed, others cried, but most couldn't believe that a jeepney driver carried such a voice. A few even compared him to Elvis himself. The local news picked it up. Then regional networks. And then, somehow, an email appeared, from a global talent show. Rico stared at it for hours, unsure if it was real. His hands trembled as he showed it to Lola Estrella, who smiled weakly through her illness. Her eyes glistened, whispering silent prayers as she held his hand. For the first time in years, Rico felt something stir inside, not just hope, but destiny. That simple Sunday song, sung for no one, had opened a door he never dared knock on. It was as if life itself had heard him, saying, "Now it's your turn." The boy who once sang to the stars was finally being called into the light. The days leading up to the audition were anything but easy. Fame had come knocking, but Rico wasn't ready to open the door. Behind every message of praise came a wave of doubt. Was he really good enough? He wasn't trained, didn't have the look, the style, or the confidence that TV demanded. He was just a jeepney driver with an old soul and a borrowed dream. Mia helped him prepare, staying late after work, recording practice sessions on her phone. She taught him how to face cameras, how to hold the mic, how to breathe through nerves. But still, when Rico looked in the mirror, he didn't see an artist, he saw a man pretending to be someone else. One night, he stood on the small rooftop of his home, the city lights blinking like scattered stars. He could hear his Lola coughing inside, her strength fading. His chest tightened with guilt, for leaving her alone, for daring to dream when survival was already a struggle. But then he remembered her voice, gentle yet firm, reminding him that some dreams are worth the pain. "Sing not for yourself," she once said, "but for everyone who forgot they could." And that changed everything. Rico began to see his gift not as a way out, but as a way through. Every rehearsal became an act of gratitude, for his mother's cassette, for the strangers who listened, for the childhood songs that never left him. He sold a week's worth of jeepney fuel to buy a second-hand suit. It didn't fit perfectly, but when he put it on, he felt something shift inside, a quiet belief, fragile yet real. The night before his flight to London, he sang for Lola one last time. His voice cracked midway, but he didn't stop. It wasn't just a song anymore, it was a promise. He wasn't the same man who sang for coins on the road. He had learned that true strength isn't in being heard by millions, it's in singing even when no one's listening. The stage lights were blinding. The air inside the auditorium felt heavy, alive with whispers and curiosity. Rico stood there, clutching the microphone, his hands trembling. The judge's eyes, including Simon Cowell's, studied him, uncertain of what to expect from the shy Filipino man in an old-fashioned suit. For a moment, Rico's voice refused to come. His heart pounded against his ribs, echoing the rhythm of a lifetime of waiting. But then, in the dark corners of his mind, he saw Lola's face, her soft smile, her frail hand waving him onward. He took a deep breath. And he sang. The first note cut through the silence like light piercing through clouds. It was, "Can't Help Falling in Love," but not as the world had heard it before. Every word carried the weight of his struggles, the long nights, the hunger, the loneliness, the love he refused to let die. His voice rose and broke and rose again, trembling with emotion, powerful yet tender. The audience fell still. Then, one by one, faces softened. Some smiled through tears. Some closed their eyes, letting the nostalgia wash over them. Even Simon leaned forward, eyes glinting, as if searching for the man behind that sound. When the last note faded, there was silence, the kind that speaks louder than applause. Then, all at once, the room erupted. People stood, clapping, shouting, crying. Rico lowered his head, unable to hold back his tears. He wasn't crying for victory or fame. He was crying because, for the first time, he felt seen. Simon's words cut through the noise, calm, astonished, genuine. "You brought back something the world forgot," he said. Rico smiled through the blur of lights, whispering a silent thank you, to his mother, to Mia, to Lola Estrella, whose soul he felt beside him on that stage. In that moment, the jeepney driver from Cebu wasn't just Rico anymore. He was the voice of every dreamer who sang in the shadows, the Filipino Elvis the world didn't know it needed, until now. Long after the applause faded and the lights dimmed, Rico's story continued, not on magazine covers or glamorous stages, but in the hearts of those who heard him sing. His video replayed across the world, not because of perfection, but because of truth. His voice carried something pure, the sound of a man who had nothing to prove, yet everything to give. Back in Cebu, the small house by the alley became a shrine of memories. Lola Estrella, though frail, lived long enough to see her grandson's moment of grace. She passed peacefully a few months later, smiling as the radio played his audition, the same voice she once nurtured under flickering light bulbs. Rico didn't mourn her with silence, he sang for her again, this time not in sorrow, but in gratitude. He returned home quietly, choosing to keep driving his jeepney on weekends, not because he had to, but because it reminded him of where he began. When passengers recognized him and asked for a song, he would smile shyly and sing a few lines. The streets that once carried his struggles now echoed his triumph. Through all the fame and invitations, he never forgot the lesson his journey carved into him, that dreams don't need perfect timing or privilege, they only need courage and heart. Rico's story became a reminder to millions that greatness can rise from the most unexpected places, from voices that echo in backstreets, from hands calloused by work, from people who keep believing even when the world forgets them. And somewhere, in another small town, a young dreamer listened to his song and whispered, "Maybe I can, too." Because sometimes, the most powerful music isn't what fills stadiums, it's what fills the silence of an unseen life and turns it into hope. Rico Dela Cruz didn't just become the Filipino Elvis. He became the proof that no matter where you come from or how small your voice may seem, when you sing with truth, the world eventually listens.